What's going on, everyone? Welcome into this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. Farzin Vasugian here with you on a Saturday. It is the week where the Chiefs are on a break. It is the bye week, but we are going to continue to do our content here on the Chief Zone podcast. This is the podcast I've actually been looking forward to doing for a very long time. We have a very special guest joining us in just a moment. His name is Kevin Patrick Allen. If you don't know or have never heard of Kevin Patrick Allen, you'll definitely get to know him on this podcast. He is a storyteller and a filmmaker, and he has been working on a documentary regarding Chiefs Hall of Famer and former Super Bowl champion Jim Tyrer. As we all know, Jim came very close to getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame last year, and right now he is one of the semifinalists and has another opportunity to get in. And within the last 10 months, his name has certainly received a lot of conversation. I've had conversations with a couple in the process. Topics we don't ever cover here on this podcast. If you or anyone needs help, talk to someone. And if you need to talk to someone, able to reach out to someone close to you personally, the Lifeline hotline is 988. And for additional resources, go to 988lifeline.org. Again, if you or someone you know needs to talk to someone, please reach out. There are resources out there. Again, the Lifeline, you can call or text 988, and you can also go to 988lifeline.org. All right, let's not waste any time. Without further ado, I want to introduce my guest on this podcast. He is a filmmaker and a storyteller. I've been working on a documentary on Jim Tyrer. It was called Beneath the Shadow. A lot of questions on that documentary, his coverage of the story, and the story that's still going on right now. Very honored to have on Kevin Patrick Allen. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us here on the Chief Zone podcast. How are you, sir? Oh, Kevin, we do not hear you.
There we go.
There we go. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm doing well.
Appreciate you joining. Listen, I don't remember when our first correspondence was, but we have been talking for a long time. And I mentioned a while back that I definitely wanted to have you on and have this topic. So I appreciate your patience, and I really do appreciate you taking some time to join us here. First and foremost, for those who may not know who you are or your background, tell us a little bit. I know you have some of your projects out there that people can check out on Amazon Prime and other streaming networks. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you can probably appreciate, as a podcaster, as a radio guy, I was a reporter for many years and just went by Kevin Patrick. And so San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Kansas City, and I kind of went the John Cougar route and came back to Mellencamp, So now my full name is out there, so people are like, has this guy been a documentary filmmaker forever, or, where did he come from? It just kind of evolved and brought the name with it. So that's my background. And everywhere I went, I've been very interested in investigative kind of stories. My dad was a prison chaplain, and he would take me into the jails and prisons, which that probably wouldn't happen today, but it just kind of set in my mind that so many times what you think you see is not what you see. And that's in good ways and in bad. And so, I mean, that just kind of was the setting that I grew out of. And, like my dad, if he wasn't a critical thinker, if he just bought everybody's story, he'd get himself killed. So you had to have that. But if he wasn't empathetic, there's no point in doing the job. So that, he gave me this weird skill set that I think really, has worked well throughout my reporting and now my filmmaking career.
And you have a lot of projects out there. A Good Man, What Comes Next, The Meeting, and I believe What Comes Next, that is on Amazon Prime, for those who want to check that out. Is that correct?
It was. I
It
don't
was.
think it's on Prime right now, but yeah, What Comes Next was about a X Games cyclist that I did a story on when he was a kid in San Francisco, and I just remember the guy was so good, but he'd broken so many bones, had so many injuries by the age of 20, and he said, "People keep telling me I'm going to regret this when I'm 40, but I won't know until I'm 40." So I just made a mental note and I looked him up when he turned 40, and he happened to live in Kansas City, and we were off to the races.
And by the way, you're from Wichita, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I grew up.
Uh, well, I went to KU, and I had only been to Wichita, I think, once or twice prior to going to KU, and I think I've only gone once since going to KU. And I always ask classmates when I was a student at KU, for those who say they're from Wichita, I say, "What is there to do in Wichita?" And every single student says nothing. Not true.
Yeah, I mean, some of that it's up to you, right? But I met my wife in high school, and I'll be honest with you, we joke that Rihanna's "I Found Love in a Hopeless Place" it was our song, for that reason. But home is home, and I think it's funny that it seems like, quote unquote, kids up here in the Kansas City area, Wichita State's a cool place to go now.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, that's the commuter school. You don't want to go to Wichita State. You want to get up to Kansas City or somewhere else. But yeah, that's evolved.
Well, you have a really interesting project on your hands right now. I know, and I've listened to some of the past interviews that you've done on other podcasts. And I know when you've been asked about Beneath the Shadow, which is the story on Chiefs Hall of Famer and Super Bowl IV champion Jim Tyrer, and a Hall of Fame nominee right now. I know you've said that the documentary is in post-production. It has not been released yet, but I would imagine there's been some updates to the story, given that around 10 months ago, there was an opportunity for him to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, came very close to my understanding, and we'll dive into that a little more later on. But you've been working on the story for quite some time. How did you get started with getting into this story?
It started because here you've got a guy, and I didn't know it at this time, who was the Super Bowl IV team captain, or one of the team captains. He would have been the first Chief in the Hall of Fame, aside from Lamar Hunt, first player. And I never heard of him. And the only way that I even stumbled upon his name was that the person who cut my wife's hair, my wife just talked about how much she admired this woman, does nice things for people, listens to everybody, but nobody really knows a whole lot about her. Well, it's Jim Tyrer's daughter. And so as eventually I came to find out, Tina's dad played for the Chiefs. I thought, yeah, I'm sure he did. He's probably a practice squad player. I don't know the name. I mean, totally honest that he did. And as a fan, I don't know the name. Now I get that he's an offensive lineman, but if you go to 9 Pro Bowls, 6 first team, you're the team captain, there's no way you don't know. So that's what really got me starting to poke around. And then what finally set the hook was I asked Tina if she would talk to me and bring her siblings. And listen, I had been a reporter long enough. I know that you find your parents, you hear their deaths from your room. Your life is not the same. Most people go off the rails to at least some degree. And to meet the 4 kids, and how in the world are you all as stable and as good people and as put together as you are? There was just so much that, like, I got to get into this.
When you had an opportunity to talk to them, I would imagine at some point the incident came up. To what you've been told, what happened between Jim Tyrer and his wife on that dark night?
Uh, yeah, this is part of what's interesting is that everybody has a version of it, and almost nobody's correct. The family signed paperwork to allow me to get all the documents, photographs of the crime scene, the pre-autopsy, where the bullets went. I mean, everything. And then I interviewed people that knew about it. What happened was not a squabble. There was no argument. There was no, you know, wrestling, fighting. It was a man who, in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., stood on his side of the bed, fired a gun at his sleeping wife, and missed. And she hops up, just oh my God, goes bolts to the end of the bed. He comes around and fires a second shot and doesn't miss this time. And then, he just lets out with his, his son described it as like a primeval wail, and then took his own life. And that was that. And we're talking about 10 seconds in a life that otherwise was in every way very admirable. So just strange, just very strange.
What were the ages of the kids when that happened?
Tina was at Mizzou. She was 19. She wasn't at home. Brad was 17. The adjacent room shared a wall, heard everything. Steph was down the hall. She was 12. She turned 13 a week after this happened. I mean, you just think about who you are at that time in life. That's anyway. Yeah. And Jason, he was 11.
I know. I had the honor of meeting Jan Sinrud about 5 or 6 weeks ago at Duran Cherry's golf invitational event, raising money for his foundation. And could not have been a nicer guy. And I had no idea that he was connected to Duran or was involved with his charity in this way. So, I introduced myself to a lot of the players who were there and had a chance to talk to them, and Jan included. As someone who was not born back then and prior to Patrick Mahomes, that was like the glory years of Chiefs football. It's always an honor to be able to meet anyone from that era of Chiefs football. I had the honor of speaking to Bobby Bell many years ago, but I did speak to Jan Sinrud and talked about Jim and his name coming up again for the Pro Football Hall of Fame because the list just came out at the time. He's still part of the nomination list right now. Jan mentioned that he had nominated Jim Tyrer, and I'll be honest, even all my years of talking about the Chiefs back when I covered sports for a living, I had always wondered how the nomination list would come out, and he had mentioned that he had nominated Jim. I would imagine you have some familiarity because I know you've spoken to some of Jim Tyrer's teammates. Can you give us maybe an insight as to specifically how that nomination works? Is it just simply, a teammate or a former player who nominates them? How does that all work?
You or I could call the Hall of Fame and nominate somebody. That's it. That's the match that lights the process, but you don't have to be qualified or anything to set that in motion, is the way I understand it. It was really beautiful symbolically that Jan started it this time. I feel like we had talked like a week or two before, and so earlier that summer, 2024, as I was working on this project and I found the things that I found, and I just couldn't believe what I found, I decided I can't wait until a film comes out. It's like, I got to get this out there. So I wrote an op-ed and I included some of the details. This has been misunderstood. Jan read that, we talked, and, and there were a small group of Hall of Fame voters too that were real, just sharp, conscientious guys that got it. And I know that that's really the heart of it. It got moving for the first time in 43 years. It got moving.
You mentioned his resume earlier, Super Bowl champion, has a lot of all pros and Pro Bowl honors to his name. I've always described it from the research I have done about what he's done on the field. For younger fans closer to my age, he was basically Willie Roaf before Willie Roaf played in the NFL.
Right.
For obvious reasons, he has been omitted from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I know at the time of the murder-suicide, I believe that was his first year he was eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He has not been a candidate since then for a very long time until just recently. Yeah. I know in my conversation with Jan, he had said that CTE was not something, and this is a very important part of the discussion here that we need to get into. CTE is not something that people were aware of in 1980 when this incident occurred. I think a lot of people are trying to use that, not justification for what had happened in the incident, because obviously what happened was horrific and you can't ever sugarcoat that. But from a football perspective, I think what's trying to be put out there is that people need to consider that CTE was not something that was studied or talked about at the time. And for on-the-field accomplishments, Jim should be in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, voters are not giving that green light of approval because of the incident that occurred. Talk to us about that a little bit with CTE and how that mixes in with all of this.
Yeah, it is a really complicated thing, and yet it's really simple as well. In terms of credentials, it's not like if all things being equal, I would go with this guy. It's not equal. Tyrer is the greatest player not in the Hall of Fame by a wide margin, and has been for a long time. And there are voters who put together a point system to kind of equalize, wide receiver, quarterback, offensive, so you can measure it. There are 10 guys that have 40 some points on this standard. Tyrer's number one at 72. So, I mean, he should be there, and everybody knows that. There's no question there. What people don't know is that this guy was the perfect storm of risk factors were in his life, and he was not aware. The game was not aware. You're talking about a guy who was 6'6", 300 pounds, and his head was so big that the helmets didn't fit. So what they would do is they would either rip out the little bit of insides that they had, or they would deconstruct the helmet, put it back together with a blade down the middle to fit on his massive head. Guess how good that helmet is? It was already bad. It's just, it was a joke. And it was that way when he played for Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And you go through all these high risk components that we now know for CTE, and he hits every one. If you look at him as a data point, it's not like he compares to this guy. It's like Tyrer's here, and here's the other guys that have had CTE. So yeah, I get people say to me, well, so-and-so had CTE and they didn't do what he did. Okay, well, there's a couple ways to respond to that. People smoke, and not all die of lung cancer. It's there's different reactions. But to use that analogy, Tyrer was going through 7 packs a day. I estimated, based on the fact that he played a record number of games, started a record number of games for the Chiefs, and then his time at Ohio State playing for Woody Hayes, the brutal kind of football they played, that he had 88,000 hits to the head. 88,000. He's just off the charts.
Yeah.
And what's ironic is a lot of the reason that he had so many is because the guy kept getting back up and going back out there, because that's what people with integrity do. That's what guys that care about their teammates do. And guys who lead people, that's what they do. So to have character and morality be the thing that keeps you out, like, oh wow, it's just so sadly ironic.
I did want to share this quote. This was about a week or two before the Super Bowl. This is from a Hall of Fame voter. He was on the Jody McDonald show. Jody McDonald, one of the greatest sports radio hosts in the media. He was on the Infinity Sports Network. This is from, and I apologize, I'm pulling it up right now, John McClain. He's a Hall of Fame voter. I don't know if you've had any interaction with him. But he was talking. Here's the exact quote. He says he should have been in forever ago. He's a finalist for the seniors. Our bylaws say you can't consider what happens away from football. What he did to his wife and himself wasn't football. If we adhere to our bylaws, if O.J. Simpson came up there today, I wouldn't want to vote for him, but I'd have to. The Jim Tyrer debate, it might be that people say Jim Tyrer was great, but I like the other guy better. He's basically advocating because he mentioned last year there were two guys that were getting serious debates. Eli Manning was one of them who did not get in, and Jim Tyrer was the other. When you hear that, and I don't know how much contact you've had with Hall of Fame voters, what is your reaction to that?
That one doesn't really surprise me too much. There were ones that were just it's morally abhorrent. CTE is not an excuse. This is the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Shame. They were broad brushes that, as if this is all fiction, that there's nobody that you're hurting when you say those kinds of things. Listen, really the only time Tyrer's name got brought up for years was when people made these dark humor jokes and stuff on Twitter, and his kids are out there. I mean, they're real people. And yeah, those kinds of things irritated me for a couple of reasons. Like if you do some research, if you reached out to me, said, hey, this guy spent X number of years, he's an investigative reporter, he's found this and this, let's see what he found, I could fill you in on so many things. But it's easier just to go the, oh, he was evil route. Yeah, I get that it's easier, but the kids, it wasn't easy for them. The in-laws, it wasn't easy for them. They had to go through this and kind of come to the understanding that bad things happen that aren't always bad people. Yeah, so the broad brushes mainly is what I found unfortunate.
Do you think part of the reason why he didn't get in last year, and again, the jury's still out on his Hall of Fame case, or Hall of Fame status, I should say, because he's a nominee now. I feel like in our society today, there's a lot on mental health and domestic violence. Those things are really brought to light today than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't think it's, a far-sighted statement to say that some of the Hall of Fame voters are considering those things, because if he gets in, I think, this becomes a big story on cable news that, hey, someone that had this domestic violence incident is now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This is a horrible look for the NFL. I think that's what voters are worried about.
Right. And that's why you can't just wade into it. You got to go all the way in. And if you do go all the way in, what you find is that there's a story that demonstrates character. There's a story that demonstrates resilience. You find out this is the real history of the NFL as it was then. There are guys behind closed doors for years that suffered, and it played out in ways that weren't violent, but they were bedridden for years. Listen, if you want to talk about character, then embrace all of your past. Don't tell me the little parts that frame you in a positive light, and then at the same time say we're family, because that's not family. The real family is what the in-laws of Tyrer were. They were people that, my God, you killed my daughter, but that I can tell, I knew that wasn't you. And so as a result, I'm going to raise your kids and never disparage your name. And when I die, I want your ashes in my casket. That was Martha's dad that allowed that. I just think if you want to talk about character is a complicated thing. And if you want to talk about family is a complicated thing. And yeah, it's really simplistic just to say he was a bad guy.
I'd like to spend some time talking about Jim's kids. And I know you've had a lot of contact with them. I do want to start from the beginning. Shortly after this incident, I know you have a couple of stories that a lot of people may not know in terms of Jim's teammates, the Chiefs organization, and just kind of how they got involved and how they tried to step in a situation like this involving Lamar Hunt and Jan Stenerud. Could you share those stories?
Yeah, the film is called Beneath the Shadow because it's all about you live in the shadow and you live in the shade of the people who came before you, the good and the bad. And there are all these wonderful things that the Chiefs family did. Jan Stenerud came by the house and picked up the boys and said, let's go out to Arrowhead during the week and then throw the football around, kick the football around. Those guys are middle-aged now, and they independently shared that story with me. I mean, it just a cool thing that stuck with them that really, Jan was like, that's not that big of a deal. Well, it was. It really was. Lamar and Norma Hunt, that house that I visited where the murder-suicide took place, Lamar and Norma came into that house, sat down on the couch, and talked to those kids. Made them feel like you don't need to be ashamed. Willie Lanier, I probably talked to him 6-10 times in the past year. Just heart of gold guy. Who, gosh, when Tyrer didn't get in last year, the phone rings here on my desk and I pick it up. I got a 20-minute sermon from Willie. It was the most powerful, fiery, who do you think you are kind of sermon that I'd heard. I mean, I wish I could have been recording, but say, you don't know my teammate. You don't know what we went through. Who are you to be? He just lit into it. And that's a game he loves. But it's just he's not going to lie to you. He's going to tell you we all paid a price and we loved it. We didn't know about these things. But you can't erase our guy. That's just not what you do.
I certainly don't want to be insensitive with this question because it is a very difficult subject to discuss or even live with, something that, I can't ever understand. But from the conversations you've had with Jim's kids, how do they live with the fact that this is what their father did?
I think part of it is it goes to what was said at the eulogy. The last thing that was said at the eulogy was we should be careful not to judge a life by its concluding events. And the kids knew who their dad was. He was so consistently admired and beloved and did the right thing that it was in contrast to anybody else in the team. That, there was just such a stark contrast. It's like something happened to Dad in the last, 2-3 years. We just don't know what it is. And I think that's what the whole family did, was they just they had to reserve judgment. We're never going to know what happened. We just know that he changed. And I think that's just so admirable that they did withhold judgment. As a reporter, I go back through all these stories that were written back then, and you see this inherent desire to wrap up a story in a neat bow within the news cycle. And that's not how life works. And I mean, I did it for years too. You want to have an answer. What if that answer isn't going to come for 35 years? If you start making assumptions, or you say, well, his business has failed and then he shot her. Yeah, his businesses did fail because he couldn't think. There's a difference between correlation and causation. So yeah, they move forward and tried to focus on what was good and tried to set aside that day.
I know a lot of times whenever a player officially gets elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, for example, Jared Allen last year, who was drafted by the Chiefs, you saw the Chiefs, they put out a nice congratulatory post. I'm sure the Minnesota Vikings did as well, and one or two of the other teams that Allen played for. Let's say Tyrer gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year. If that happens, I kind of wonder if the Chiefs would recognize it or not, and not because they are ashamed of his on the field accomplishments, but I guess they're worried about some of the backlash, especially with some of the things that have happened in Chiefs history, recent history, like the Javon Belcher incident back in 2012, the incident with the son of Andy Reid, Britt Reid. There have been some negative off the field incidents that have happened with the Chiefs over the last 10 to 15 years, and I don't know. I don't know how the public would perceive it. I don't know how the Chiefs would welcome this or even acknowledge it. Do you have you ever had any contact with anyone from the organization right now, and whether or not this is something that they're trying to push for to get Jim into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of interactions with old teammates. Some people with the Chiefs. It of course is very sensitive. What I kind of do is I look for signals, because I think it is so sensitive. Maybe some people don't want to step out. That's my read on it.
Yeah.
But if you go to the Chiefs Hall of Honor, in the past year, they put up a new display for Jim. I think that, in my estimation, that's a tip of the hat to the kids. That's we know. And I mean, he is a member of the Chiefs Hall of Fame. That enormous bust is up there. His best friend, Fred Urbanus, is next to him, down. And yeah, in the building, they know.
To go back to Jim's kids, I don't know where you were when the Hall of Fame finalists were announced and those who got elected. Were you with Jim's family when that was being revealed? And whenever you first got the chance to talk to them, what were their reactions to Jim falling short of the Hall of Fame?
Oh, that was that was a bad day. It was a bad day. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've told them, and they've told me it's not true, but I put them out there. I ripped off the scab by doing the story. So I felt really bad about it. So it's almost like, if you're going to get these guys to the championship game, you better win. Yeah. I kind of felt like TCU. You know what I mean? We got to the championship game, and then it was just crushing.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we were, all five of us were on a Zoom call, and yeah, they're such solid people, and the emotions were back. And I mean, from a couple of them that I had not seen it before. It's just like, it was like their dad was being shamed, and he was. There were some very irresponsible comments. I mean, when you frame something as morally abhorrent, and you don't stop to consider in 2025, we know that moral decision making goes through here. And that's what the man used 88,000 times. What do you think this morality is? Is it some nebulous thing that you just cling on to for your argument? I mean, yeah, that was bad. And I think the way it ended was one of the kids said, "Well, Kev, I guess the movie's over." and the other one said, "How does it end?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." But let me tell you how it ends. And this has changed now.
Yeah.
I said in my mind, this is the truth of the matter, that your family legacy is not in the Hall of Fame, and your family legacy is on the property where your dad and your grandpa planted these trees when it was the early 60s, and those trees are 100 feet tall now. That's what family is. So those trees are going to be there longer than the Hall of Fame is. They'll still be standing. So that's your ending. And I felt good about that. And then, I don't know, a couple weeks later, I felt like that's still a little bit hollow.
Yeah.
You want to win now, and in the future. And the information is out there to make the right choice. I mean, I've got the medical information. I've shown it to them. They know what the medical information is. It's just a matter of whether, you accept that this is a tough story, but you need to do it right.
What is their level of optimism right now with Jim being a nominee once again?
It was a lot to go through last year, but they're willing to go through it again. The level of optimism, oh gosh. One of them said, "I think my son will accept the award someday." So it's like, he's going to get in. There's going to be enough people that get it. And then another one said, "I think it'll be this year." And another one said, I just don't have any faith. And I think it runs the gamut. Yeah.
I think what's so difficult about the Hall of Fame, my biggest frustration last year is they only had 4 players go in. And look, I know there's this big debate, and I know there's more of a football conversation than about CTE or about Jim specifically. I know there are a lot of people who say, listen, we've got to be very careful with who gets in, because you don't just want to accept everyone that was a Pro Bowl or a champion. And I certainly get that.
Right.
And this is not me trying to play devil's advocate, but the Hall of Fame has been so weird over the years that there have been a lot of great players that have had to wait a very long time. I've had conversations with Neil Smith. He has, tried to put it out there, why is he not in yet? He believes he will, and he hopes that it'll be, while he's still here on this earth. Duron Cherry, who I mentioned I've got a great relationship with, I think it's, crazy that he's not even a nominee, a semifinalist. So Derek Thomas had to wait a very long time to get into the Hall of Fame. People thought it took him longer than it should have. So I think that, and listen, I understand. Everyone knows a big reason why he was omitted last year was more for off the field reasons than on the field reasons. But I think if they keep putting his name out there, he's got to get in eventually. Like you mentioned, that his son will accept the award one day. The late Therese Paylor, who was a fantastic reporter covering Missouri, covering the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star and for Yahoo Sports. I remember there was a video of him that came out, and I had never seen this. I don't know if people post these videos often, but he actually, in the room where they were debating the Hall of Fame the week of the Super Bowl, they showed him making the case for Tony Gonzalez, and it was a great case. He went in there, he talked about his accomplishments, what he had done on the field. And I wish we saw more of that for other players. I don't know if there's, especially with social media, if there's a policy that, people need to keep their phones away or whatnot. Do you know if there's anyone in the media or any of the voters who are trying to make, I know I mentioned McLean's point in an interview, but are there any voters that are trying to push for this to happen?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I know way more than I'm supposed to know, but they also don't follow their own rules, so I'm okay with that. I mean, people want to tell me what happened inside the room. I want to know, and numerous people have told me what happened inside the room. And I think the more transparency, the better. Here's the biggest thing last year. I know that there's lots of reasons and there's lots of good candidates, but like I said earlier, Tyrer was supposed to go in 81. He was a finalist, and yeah, it's just not the same thing. The unfortunate thing is that they break some rules and they adhere to others, and as a result, nobody is fully informed. And by that, I mean, you're not supposed to vote on anything other than what happened on the field. But you decide that you're going to be a moral arbiter, which is reasonable. I mean, if you're really informed, so you make this decision that I'm going to break the rules to do the right thing. But when you tell that to everybody else, this is what I'm going to do, and somebody says, hey, let's discuss this. Did you know about this medical information? Did you know this? Did you talk to the reporter who dug into this? And they say, no talking.
Yeah.
Then what you've just ensured is all of you can break the rules, but none of you can be informed. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, I had voters that I talked to after the fact that told me their reasoning, and I said, did you know that conclusion you made about CTE is actually in this study, that's not how it works? Well, no, I don't know anything about CTE.
Wow, geez.
Holy, that's why you don't vote on morality when you don't know.
Yeah.
But they didn't let them interact, because the interactions would have been on something they're not supposed to talk about.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, listen, not to go out of bounds here, but we already have politicians who vote on things and they don't even know the specifics on what they're voting on. I mean, that's already bad enough. We already have enough of these things going on. So look, I've always believed, and I used to be a member of Pro Football Writers of America, and they would have us, and obviously Pro Football Writers, that's not the official award that gets handed out at the NFL Honors, but it's still recognized by a lot of people. And I remember when they were asking us to vote for the All-Pro team, and I think I was in my early 20s at the time. And listen, I don't care how old you are or how long you've covered football. I truly don't think anyone out there can tell you who the 5 best centers are or the 5 best left guards, left tackles, because those positions specifically are just, there aren't enough stats out there like on ESPN or NFL.com. They are on websites like Pro Football Focus and whatnot.
Right.
But anyway, my point is, whenever I had to give my my ballot for the All-Pro team, I did the research because I don't want to give an uninformed ballot to these people. So I've always believed in doing the research, and it's really unfortunate that you're seeing some people not do that. Kevin, this has been a great conversation. I really do appreciate your time. Before we wrap up here, the name of your documentary, Beneath the Shadow. Before I get into my question, when did you start working on this? What year?
I did the end of 2019, the beginning of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I made a list of, we did a short documentary just kind of about Jim Tyrer, did it for Super Bowl IV teammates and screened it with them. And then I was like, I wonder if there's evidence to show why he changed. And I made a list of 5 or 6 things that I really thought there was a snowball's chance of finding, and we found them.
Obviously, this, I think if you're a Chiefs fan or you're a football fanatic like I am, this is definitely one you want to see. I would imagine you've had ideas of when you would like for this to be published, but given the recent news with Jim being a finalist last year and once again possibly being a finalist this year, I don't know if I mean, this is a good question, but I don't know if there's a good answer for it. When is the possible release of this film? Well, what's your ideal date for this possibly coming out?
I'm hopeful in just a few months. We've had a lot of interest, and one of the things that we were asked to do was to recut with some of the new information, and which is what we're doing now. And then when there was so much of the morality talk, you may have read it in the Star. I took everything that I'd found and I commissioned a study from a forensic analyst who testifies in court, and I said, "Here, take all this. What would you say in court?" And after 6 weeks, I get a letter that says, if I were on the stand, I would say this man was not at the wheel. And it's stuff like that I wish the film had come out like 3 years ago, that each time it gets delayed for whatever reason, another door opens that makes things more clear.
Yeah.
And so there's a benefit in that.
To be clear, regardless what happens with Jim or not, your target is to have this sometime in the 2026 football offseason. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, I mean we intended for it to be out in the fall this year. Right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Kevin, this has been a fantastic conversation. We've covered a lot. Is there anything important about this discussion that we haven't really brought to light here that you would like to bring up before we let you go?
Yeah, I would just say that the kids and that family, they talk about the good days and they talk about what kind of player he was. So when I hear a voter or I hear a talk show say, "Oh God, we're not going to go through this again. Can we just talk about football?" Yeah, we would like to. And if you did, he would be in the Hall of Fame. But by you have a moment of silence to honor somebody, but when you have decades of silence, you dishonor them, because nobody hears how the kids grew. Nobody hears the resilience that came out of it. Nobody hears the science that ended up explaining what happened. I think the whole family thing, it's difficult for pro football to really call themselves a family. Teammates can, but I think it's probably disingenuous for an institution to do that unless they embrace their whole, the entirety of their past and their present.
If people have more interest and if they would like to follow you on social media or get updates on this documentary, how can they follow you, and where else can they go to get more information?
Yeah, I encourage people, voters, anybody that wants to see what I found, my business site, kppllc.net. There's the Beneath the Shadow is there. Contact info for me is there. The arguments for and against him, all of those things are there. And yeah, I would tell you that when I went into the project and the kids told me what a great guy their dad was, I've heard that a million times after horrible things that I've covered. Everybody thinks that their loved one who passes was a great person. And I usually dig in. I'm like, this so blew me away that's why I'm so outspoken about it. It's really a travesty. The man can be disappeared. And we really should say Martha's name. Martha was lost in this, and Martha Tyrer fought for her husband and her family. And it was a great loss, but it wasn't an evil person.
Well, Kevin, I'm excited to see this documentary, and hopefully it does have a good ending to it. I really do appreciate your time here and definitely appreciate the work you have done on this story. And if you guys want to give Patrick a follow on Twitter, I'll post the link below in the comments, but it is at @KPatrickAllen on X. Kevin, would love to have you back on whenever you have a date announced for the release of this documentary. I do want to thank you again for your time, and be well, and we'll keep in touch.
Hey, thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate it. That is Kevin Patrick Allen, storyteller and filmmaker, joining us here on the Chief Zone podcast. A lot to uncover there. And like I said, if you guys want to follow him for more details, at K Patrick Allen, also his business website, kppllc.net. Again, kppllc.net for more information. And there's a tab right there. You'll see it at the top. Can't miss it. It says Beneath the Shadow. And if you guys want to ask Kevin any questions, there's also a contact us form there. It's a very interesting conversation. And I'm eager to see what happens within the next 2.5 months with all of this. And we'll find out sooner rather than later, hopefully. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us for this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. Let them know about the podcast. If you tuned in during the live stream and missed any part of it, hey, it'll be archived shortly on Facebook, X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere where you can download and listen to a podcast. Share it with your friends once again if you haven't done so already. I appreciate you guys joining me. Once again, our big thanks to Kevin Patrick Allen. I am Farzin Vasugian. I will talk to you all on Monday as we start Chiefs versus Broncos talk and much more. That'll come up then. Talk to you then. Take care.